Hey everyone! So this video is going to be a little bit different than what we normally post because, well, Claire and I are on vacation, if you couldn't guess from the obviously hotel-looking background behind me. We've been in Germany for the past week or so, and we're having a fantastic time, and I wanted to share with you a couple of the cool things we saw and definitely some of the more telecom-related things we saw. Before we get into the telephone stuff, I have to talk about the Zollverein, which I'm going to butcher the pronunciation every time, I'm sorry. But the Zollverein and the Ruhr Museum were fantastic. These are, this is, because it's kind of all in the same place, just outside of Essen, which is a big coal processing and sort of industrial portion of Germany. So this coal processing mine and plant was built, in the early mid 20th century, and it's like perfectly preserved. The architecture is outstanding, and they let you walk around the grounds for free. It's just this expansive, amazing place. The other thing we did was we rode the Schwebebahn in Wuppertal, and I know all you trains nerds know about the Schwebebahn. It is so cool. It was totally worth the little trip to Wuppertal to ride it. We took it back and forth, I think, a few times, and it was just a complete blast. And it's kind of funny because Wuppertal isn't a major city. There's not a whole lot of stuff to do there, but just riding the SkyTrain around was so good. And then we eventually made our way to one of the things that I wanted to see the most, which was the Telephone Museum in Bochum. And this museum was super interesting to me because it's a lot like our museum in Seattle, where it's currently run by a bunch of old telephone central office retirees. And they had a very similar mission to how we were founded, which is, the telephone company, Deutsche Telekom, was sort of getting rid of all of their electromechanical stuff and putting in more electronic switching. So they all got together and formed a nonprofit, and they started a whole switching museum. Because none of them really spoke English save for one younger volunteer, I didn't get to communicate as clearly as I wanted to, but knowing what I already know about electromechanical telephone exchanges, I could make out a lot of what was going on with these systems. But they also let us leave with a couple of really cool artifacts that I want to show you. This one here is from the System 22, and it was named after the year that it was put in service. So this is a Strowger type selector from a System 22, and you could see it's got a lot in common with the sort of Strowger step that we'd see in America. We've got 3 wipers here. They go up, they go over, and then they return home. And it's kind of gunky here, so it needs some oil and some cleaning, but I'm really excited to get this cool thing to work. This one is similar in principle in that it's a 2-motion step type selector. This one's from, I believe, it's called the System 50. But again, it's a 2-motion selector. It's just much more compact. So here's our 3 wipers, and we can go up, and then we can go over. And similar to the British GPO style selectors, this one requires you to wipe all the way to the end before it returns home. So up, over, and then back down again. And this has the integral relay set here that's just completely integrated into the selectors. These relays are really weird. For some reason, I didn't expect this, but they're not rigidly mounted like we see in the States. They are really, really bendy. Look at that. Isn't that wild? And if you could see right where my fingertip is, I don't know if the camera will focus or not, there's kind of a, like a bendy U, sideways U bingus, and you could see that it kind of bends on that. It's really wild. So in this museum, they kind of try to cover the whole inner workings of the telephone system. So much like our museum, they have an outside plant display, which has like pedestals and, cable splicing and all that stuff. And they also have an excellent collection of different telephones. They have a collection of teletypewriters, not teletypes, but teletypewriters. They have a little clock system, so they have 1 or 2 master clocks in there, which really struck a nerve with me as a clock nerd. I was like, yes, to see that. And they also have a display of mobile telephony and more modern stuff as well. But the real heart of their collection, at least to me, was the switch room. And when we got there, that's what I walked into right away. I almost couldn't help myself. I was like, yeah, I don't care. Show me the switches. And they've got a beautiful collection there. It starts out with the System 22, which is, as an American, the one that's the most recognizable to me as coming from Strowger. Everything is really exposed. Everything's really beautiful. We were allowed, of course, to make calls through everything. We were allowed to touch things. And of course, when they left me alone with the equipment, I had to set off an alarm. If Sarah's good at one thing, it's setting off alarms. So the System 22 was beautiful. After that was the System 50, which is that other selector I showed you, the very small boxy one. Sort of a later evolution of that 2-motion progressive control Strowger principle. And we got to see kind of a call simulator placing calls on it. After that was the System 55, and this one was interesting to me because we have a single piece of this in our museum, just a selector, nothing else. And this is a System 55 selector without the bank. So there should be a contact bank back here. And these wipers are what move around and scan over the bank. And the interesting thing to me that I think is really clever about this system is it's still sort of progressive control in that it is, hunting progressively through a number of selectors. But in a really clever design here, we're no longer directly coupled to the subscriber's dial. These two magnets here at a 90-degree angle to each other, this is kind of a really, really old-fashioned version of a stepper motor. So the way this hunts around is this magnet will be energized and then this magnet will be energized, and they will alternate like that. And there's kind of an armature in here that you can't see. I'll try to get a better picture of it and put it on the screen. But there's an armature in here that rotates by this rudimentary little stepper motor, and then it moves the carriage with the brushes around. And it's just so neat. The other thing I really like about this system is that the brushes are lifted off. Let's see if you can see that. The brushes are lifted off the contact banks while it's in the process of making a selection. So there's no noise and there's no excessive wiping over the tip and ring of everyone else's phones. And that's also a very clever design. So this system had registers like register senders and some way of doing translation so that the customer could dial one thing and then another result would actually come out. The next thing I saw that I really loved was the System 58. Now, this was an East German telephone exchange, so east of the wall. It had these lovely little cabinets that you could open up to expose, the selectors inside. And it sort of felt a little bit like another type of rotary exchange. One of the things that stuck out to me is if you opened up one of the cabinets, there were 2 light switches to illuminate the banks of selectors so that you could work on them. And it's sort of funny to me that the East Germans got, work lights, but we don't have any integrated lighting in the States for any of our systems, right? When I want to work on the panel or the crossbar or something, I just get like a plug-in 48 volt clip-on work lamp. But, of course the East Germans get integrated lamps. Anyway, I would love to know more about that system. It was just so cool. And then finally in the switch room, they had, I don't remember what they called it, but it was like a System 62, I think, and it was a long distance or tandem exchange. The way I understood it was that it connected like 2 adjacent cities or several adjacent cities together. So in the States, we'd call that a tandem. And I think that was the same concept that they were using it for here. One of the coolest things about it was that it had centralized testing facilities, which I didn't see in any of the other switches. So blew my mind a little bit that this machine had its own trouble recorder, which if you've seen, some of our past videos, you'll know that I fixed up the trouble recorder in the number 5 crossbar, and we got it to punch cards and everything. But this had a very similar thing. Now, it used what looked to me like normal IBM Hollerith cards, and it had this amazing little card transport system where once the card was punched, it would drop it into a particular bin, basically saying like, okay, this is a permanent signal, this is a failure, to connect, this is a failure to translate. The other thing that they had at the centralized test equipment was a Hellschreiber printer that printed out circuit troubles. It just had like this long tape that would come out, and on the tape would be like locations of selectors that were in trouble. And I had never seen a Hellschreiber machine in person before. I looked them up online. There's some YouTube videos about them, but they always fascinated me, and it was really cool to see one integrated into an actual like test frame in a telephone exchange. So yeah, it was a great time. Besides the switching, they also let us play with the teletypewriters. They let us take a peek into their storage room, which honestly, Claire and I both thought that it felt a lot like our storage room. If you're a telecoms nerd and you are ever in, around Essen or Dusseldorf or Bochum, it's worth the short train ride to go see these folks. It was so much fun. What's next for us? Well, we're gonna be on vacation for a while longer. And when we get back to the States, I've got a couple more fun videos planned that'll hopefully be coming out in the August-September timeframe. But yeah, it's time for us to go out and see Berlin. So until next time, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you later.